All is fair in love and war, unless, of course, your country abides by the Geneva Conventions. The Geneva Convention is a series of international treaties and embedded protocols modified by generations that regulates instances of armed conflict in order to preserve life and humanity. These treaties are put there to protect humanity from the brutalities of war, which happens a lot. Not very many people in the United States realize the importance of the Geneva Convention and that it is applied to all citizens living here. For the next few minutes, I will define the Geneva Convention, also known as the Law of War, its history, and its current relevance. The Geneva Conventions are a group of treaties that ensure the treatment of civilians, prisoners of war, and soldiers who are considered hors de combat. For those of you who don't know what hors de combat mean, it comes from a French term meaning outside the fight. It refers to soldiers who are sick, wounded, and somehow disabled to continue the fight. There are 4 conventions or treaties and 2 protocols. I will explain the 4 conventions. Convention 1, created in 1864, protects soldiers who are wounded and protects them from torture without judgment. This convention also gives the right to provide medical treatment and care to injured soldiers. Convention 2 was created in 1906 and is just an extension of Convention 1, but it now applies to sailors and Navy personnel, which it didn't have before. Convention 3 was created in 1929, and it provides the definition of a POW, or prisoner of war. And it ensures everything in the Convention 1 applies to prisoners of war. Myself being in the Army, the convention applies to me because I'm only protected under Convention 3, but I have to give them my name, rank, social security number. I'm sure you guys have heard that in movies. And under this convention, I cannot be tortured to extract information theoretically. Convention 4, created at the time of ratification in 1949, this convention provides all of the protections granted to soldiers and sailors and POWs, but now to the civilian force. It also has specific regulations to help civilian doctors, hospitals, and transports so nobody can attack them. A little bit about the history of the Geneva Convention. The world must know what happened and never forget. This quote was spoken by General Eisenhower while he was visiting a Nazi death camp in 1945. I believe this quote to be a proper example of why the camp in of why the Geneva Convention was established. Up into the events of World War II, there has been a lot of tragic events caused by various wars that was considered to be unjust. The developmental ideas of the conventions began in the 1800s by a Swiss social activist named Henry Dunant. Henry Dunant witnessed the aftermath of a terrible battle, and then he expressed his memories into a book called A Memory of Solferino. This book ultimately inspired the creation of ICRC, the International Committee of Red Cross. And fun fact, this also made him the first winner of the Nobel Peace Prize. The Geneva Conventions were negotiated in 1939 to 1945 from a direct result of the injustice that happened in World War II. It became official in 1949, consisting of all 3 treaties, and plus they added the 4th convention, which protects civilians. How it applies today? Recently, the Geneva Convention received attention in the Gulf War area due to a lack of enforcement that resulted in inhumane behavior of custodial forces. Not all countries have adopted the Geneva Conventions, and in the absence of the conventions, soldiers must still follow the rules set by their respective country. While I was in Afghanistan, because I personally witnessed how that affects us. My job over there was detainee ops, and that was watching over prisoners of war or detainees. There is a difference. Detainees are taken by American soldiers but have not been tried. Now, what the Geneva Convention promised them, even though they don't abide by those rules, we still have to do it. They got excellent food, better than our prison systems here. Blankets, like thousands of them. They can get anything they want. They got medical, dental, prosthetics, everything. And also the ICRC gives them books, pencils, pens, anything they need. In most recent news, on October 23rd of this year, state representatives from over a dozen African countries speculated the development and importance of the Geneva Convention. These included solutions to repress war crimes, in which a majority of African states adopted the convention and applied much needed updates. This is a response to the aforementioned nature of conflict. It's a reminder of relevance of the convention's importance. To summarize, the Geneva Convention today remains paramount in all instances of armed conflicts and its effects, which is a humane act to preserve life and reason, now and for future generations. After this speech, I sincerely hope all of you have learned a little bit about the law of war that helps humanity while in conflict. And if you were bored while this speech, just know that I have to get a 2-hour PowerPoint every month on this. So. That's it.